Hello, I'm Amanda Walker, and welcome to Inside America, the show that brings you insight and analysis of the biggest issues facing the United States right now.
No dictators in the USA!
On this week's show, the Trump pushback. As the administration bulldozes through its third month, there's growing angst among voters over where this unchecked power might lead.
This is getting really scary. Why is he not being impeached right now?
The Democratic Party appears lost at sea, hitting a new polling low and sinking in squabbles over strategy. Should they roll over and play dead or rise up and resist? Coming up, how people power is driving the early resistance to Trump.
You are not here to serve yourself. You are here to serve people.
And we speak to a key player in the last reinvention of the Democratic Party that ultimately secured Bill Clinton's victory.
They want combat, they want to be fighting back against Trump. But the most important job for Democrats is to reform themselves.
So while Democratic Party leaders are bickering amongst themselves over how to tackle Trump, voters are taking matters into their own hands. What may so far be lacking in numbers is being made up for in rage and emotion.
Hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go.
This is what opposition to Donald Trump looked like the day after his first inauguration. The 2017 Women's March marked one of the largest single-day protests in US history. 8 years on, this gargantuan collective outrage is no more, but pockets of resistance are bubbling across the nation.
Tyranny is rising in the White House, and a man has declared himself our king. So I would like to know, rather, the people would like to know what you, congressmen, and your fellow congressmen are going to do to rein in the megalomaniac in the White House.
In this town hall meeting in Georgia, Republican Congressman Rick McCormick faced backlash from angry voters.
And I think across the board, he's done some very good things. I think
Republican Glenn Grothman was confronted by another heated crowd in Wisconsin. GOP lawmakers have been told to stop in-person town halls to avoid similar scenes going viral. Congressman Michael Baumgartner may regret not heeding that warning at this forum a few days ago in Washington state.
I've never been involved in politics before, but this is getting really scary. Okay, so the things that frighten me is the way this insane president talks about Canada as a 51st state. Taking Panama by force and buying Greenland. How does this person qualify as sane? Why is he not being impeached right now?
With democracy, down with the oligarchy.
People are also focusing their fury on the heart of Elon Musk's empire, gathering outside this dealership in New York as part of the Tesla takedown movement. Genteel in comparison to the more aggressive attacks happening across the country. The electric vehicles are bearing the brunt of people's rage. The people aren't just angry, they're devastated by what the Trump administration is doing.
How do you feel when you wake up each day at the moment?
You can look at her face and my face. We're distraught because this is not normal, and this is not our country that we've lived in for all of our decades. We're 68 years old, and we've never felt this cruelty, and we never felt we had to.
You've never protested before?
No, never. And you can disagree on policy all day long. That is what democracy survives on. That is how you get to conclusions and help the American people. You are not here to serve yourself. You are here to serve people.
Everything he puts out there, it hurts me. And I'm here to have a voice for everybody.
Is there enough opposition?
No, not right now. I don't think we have enough yet.
What do you want to see?
I want to see change. I want him out of office.
What do you think of what Donald Trump's doing at the moment?
He's being rude to girls and immigrants.
These are the rights of my daughters that we're fighting for. And I think it's important to teach them to fight for themselves. And I don't want them looking back in 50 years and wondering what Mom did.
There is a lot of disbelief and outrage out there, but this is quite a small protest. Why is that?
I think people are afraid, and they're putting their head down. They kind of lost hope after the election because he won, and so in some sense, it's been legitimized. But make no mistake, everyone who voted against him definitely doesn't support the things he's doing now. I think many of the people that did vote for him are also finding out that this is not what they wanted. And I feel like it might take a big event for people to kind of gain the motivation to kind of come out and protest.
So far, the resistance movement seems lost. It has no uniting figure to follow, and people do seem to be craving one. Most of the protesters we spoke to are angry at the Democrats for their perceived lack of action. It seems that right now, they simply don't know what to do as they flail in the fire hose of Trump's actions. But they have been here before. In 1992, the Democrats had been devastated by 3 successive Republican victories. Then entered Bill Clinton. The key engine of the party's reinvention that led to his victory was the Progressive Policy Institute, referred to then as Clinton's Idea Mill. Its founder and president is Will Marshall. I asked him where the Democratic Party's popularity sits in 2025.
Well, it's pretty low. There was a lot of anger directed at Democrats in the last election last year, and it's still there. And so Democrats are seen as not having done a good job in the previous 4 years, as defending a status quo that is very unpopular with the public, and that's why Donald Trump was elected. So Democrats are not terribly well trusted and have disadvantages on the questions about, which party do you think will do a better job handling the economy or immigration or housing or any number of issues. Right now, Democrats are underwater on all of those questions.
So you mentioned that idea of being protectors of the status quo, and you've got Donald Trump tearing up the rule book. When we talk about strategy going forward, is that key to what they need to do, to stop that image that they just want to keep things the same and to start saying, we don't just want to stop what he's doing, but here's our plan?
Our view is that Democrats have a dual challenge. Of course, we have to oppose Donald Trump's really radical initiatives, the worst ones that are destructive and in no way really reforms of the things that Americans are really concerned about. But the most important job for Democrats is to reform themselves. This party needs a reinvention. The party has been declining, it's been losing members, really since about the time that Barack Obama left the White House in the last decade. So Democrats have been shrinking, and they need to expand their party, which is going to require a wholly different agenda, reoriented around the working class voters that Democrats have lost in this period. So we're looking at this as a challenge for Democrats to say, okay, we need to go through a period of party renewal as we also try to limit the damage that Donald Trump can do over the next 4 years.
So let's look more at where we're at now. That recent spending bill really exposed the kind of tensions and the fractious nature of the Democratic Party. How do you view all of that?
Well, there's no question that Democrats are in a foul and surly mood. They want combat. They want to be fighting back against Trump, who is doing outrageous things, stretching stretching laws to the limit, and in some cases just riding roughshod over them. So that combative attitude is out there. About 2/3 of Democratic voters really want to see the party fighting. But we have to know when and where to choose our battles, because if all we do is reflexively oppose Donald Trump, then it will feed into his narrative that Democrats are the party of the status quo, the party that is against the kind of changes that people voted for last year. So it's a balance. Democrats need to be careful in picking their targets. And I'll name three that I think really make sense for Democrats now. One is Donald Trump's tariffs, high tariff policy, not popular in the country. This assault on government. There is a large appetite for reinventing or reforming government, but this chainsaw attack on government is not going down well with the American people. It's unpopular. And I think what's happening recently, the prospect that the United States may simply abandon Ukraine and throw them to the Russian wolves is also something that's not popular. So that's a little closer, because a lot of Americans are tired of overseas adventures or misadventures, don't want to be dragged into conflicts. But I also don't think that they want to see Vladimir Putin's aggression rewarded and Ukraine's independence snuffed out.
So you seem to be saying fight, but pick your battles, choose them wisely.
Right.
There is another strategy that says roll over and die for now, let Donald Trump self-destruct. What's your take on that?
I think that's a big mistake. I think Donald Trump is making a lot of errors. As I said, his policies are not popular, and he is not popular. This is a newly elected president. Their personal approval ratings are usually up in the 50s. His are down at around 44, 45%. So this is not a man with a solid national majority behind him. But as I said, the power is distributed in a ways that we can't really stop him at this point, except for in the courts. Yes, he may well mess things up. We think he's already doing that. And the early polling is bad for him, but he doesn't care, I suppose, because he doesn't have to face re-election again. But in any event, it would be a huge mistake for Democrats to just say, hang on, 2 years from now we'll be back in power. That could happen. We could win the House of Representatives back in 2 years, but we would be back where we were last time, and in fact the last several presidential elections. That is, back in a position of relative parity, the two parties about even, neither of them able to command a steady majority, and both of them ping-ponging in and out of power every 2 and 4 years. That's not what we want. We want to build a real Democratic majority, a durable majority that can govern, that can win re-election, that can really change the direction of the country. And if you're just going to try to get in on the other side's missteps and mistakes, you're not going to be expanding the party in the way we need to do now.
Personality, is that something that's lacking at the moment, that one person who people can flock to, the figurehead of the movement?
Yes, of course. We don't really have a leader now, and we won't until the next presidential cycle starts up in 2 years, really. We have congressional leaders, but they don't really personify the Democratic Party to the public. They just rule their particular caucuses in each chamber of Congress. So what we will see is a new presidential cycle, and we'll see new faces emerging. We can guess who some of these people are, but we can't guess who all of them are. It's too early to say.
Do you think there has to be an element of bending to what's become a reality under Trump, that politics is almost like showbiz now? People voted for Donald Trump because of the character that he was in a TV show. Do the Democrats have to go in that direction a bit? I mean, seriously, like putting someone like Mark Cuban, a known person, or I don't know, The Rock, whoever, but somebody who is more of a showbiz figure than a traditional politician, again, going against that notion of the status quo.
Well, you're right. The premise is right that, Trump has brought something new in a kind of showmanship. I would call it a con artist ability to, an illusionist ability to make people believe things that aren't true. But in any event, you know, he is performative and he's entertaining, and a lot of people are drawn to that and forgive him a lot of personal faults and sins because he makes politics more fun to them. So that's a real phenomenon. On the other hand, we've never seen anything quite like that in American politics. And usually you want, you know, somebody that's a professional public servant. You want somebody that knows how to represent people, knows how to unite rather than divide the country, and that's usually been something that Americans demand in their presidents. They want somebody that can pull people together, not drive them apart. So we're in an odd period, an unusual period where polarization has been the rule, and I don't think it should define us going forward. I think we'll get back to something like normalcy after Trump. That doesn't mean that there won't be other Republican demagogues that will be trying to act like him, but I don't think they'll quite pull it off because a lot of this is rooted in his showmanship and his persona.
Do you think if the election were today that Donald Trump would win?
No, it's not that bad, but it is his specific.
Do you think he'd still win?
Probably, because we're on the back foot, and you know he's still got an enthusiastic Republican backing, but he is losing independent voters. That's critical. Independent voters put Joe Biden on top over Trump in 2020. We're seeing his support among independent voters go down. So, you know, not every Trump voter is a MAGA voter. The MAGA voters, the hardcore populists, they're still with him and probably support him no matter what he did. With the tariffs breaking down, with the government shrinking project breaking down, with the economy not rising, I think, you know, people are beginning to say, well, what's behind all this showmanship and this glittering rhetoric?
Will Marshall from the Progressive Policy Institute there. So, fight everything, fight some things, or fight nothing seem to be the strategies at play here. Let's discuss with our panel, Democratic strategist Orson Porter and campaign reporter at The Hill, Caroline Vakil. Caroline, let me start with you. So you've got a good insight as to what's happening on Capitol Hill. What are the vibes at the moment?
Right now, I think that Democrats are trying to find their footing again post-election. I think that they're trying to figure out what their messaging is. I think Democrats are trying to sort of hone in on specific messaging. I think one of the first things that we're seeing them do is honing in on Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, and trying to harness some of that anger that we're seeing in voter town halls, for example, and try to direct it back to the Trump administration. They're hoping that this is going to be a potential way for some of those voters that they lost in November to really come back to their side. So that's one message that we're starting to see. They're starting to participate in town halls, going to Republican districts, trying to harness that anger as well. But those are a couple ways that Democrats are trying to reset post-November.
But Orson, it's a bit of a mess at the moment, isn't it? There's no sort of unifying strategy here. What path do you think they should take?
Well, Mike Tyson once said, you always have a plan until you get punched. And the Democrats...
And they got punched,
right?
Punched. So they're still reeling from that, but is it about time they pick themselves up?
Well, let's look at it through the lens of this, that there's 592 days until the midterms. So that gives Democrats an opportunity to have a course correction. Unfortunately for the Democrats, President Trump, to his credit, is moving at a rapid speed and is not necessarily depending on congressional approval for his policy agenda. It's more executive orders. So even though Democrats may find their way, in the next 6 months to a year, it's likely that President Trump will have achieved all of his policy initiatives through executive orders without congressional approval. So the Democrats then will have time to focus in on the midterm elections, to focus in on priority items for some of the decisions that Trump has made. So what am I trying to say? There's a lot of time to get this right.
Right, so they may have time, but voters are pretty impatient right now, certainly the ones that didn't vote for Donald Trump. What they're seeing is worrying them, and polls are saying they want to see the Democrats fight. Why aren't they more visibly fighting right now, do you think?
I think it's a couple things. I think right now Democrats are conducting their own postmortems, and they're sort of looking at the election as a Rorschach test, if you will. There are common themes that I think the party has started to agree, that their branding with voters is largely underwater, that they need to be more sympathetic to kitchen table issues, including the economy and inflation. But then you might start to move away from some of those other issues relating to transgender issues. Some Democrats feel like the way that the Democratic Party has situated themselves on certain issues like that.
So move to the center?
Move to the center, but progressives and other Democrats, including, for example, Red State Governor Andy Beshear, doesn't agree with that. And so I think that there's still a little bit of a process of coming to what exactly are all of the takeaways. Democrats were going to have their first show of unity with the government shutdown and funding bill, and that kind of came apart very quickly. House Democrats were very united against voting against this funding bill that Republicans were trying to push forward, I should say. They wanted to see a shutdown. They wanted to see a standoff with the Trump administration government, and with the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer then reversing course, that was a fracture within the unity that Democrats have been trying to project post-election. And so I think in some ways their calculus is also a little bit scrambled about what's the best way to effectively counter Trump right now.
Yeah, and they don't seem to be able to decide on that, Lawson. And one senior strategist suggested roll over and play dead, just watch it all burn. Where do you sit on that one?
Well, I think it's a matter of having some enthusiasm and being unified, not necessarily in the message, but the takeaway I'm getting from these town hall meetings and the constituents meeting with Democrats of late is show me you give a damn, fight. And I think Democrats are looking towards the party and Congress to put up a fight. And in a fight, you'll find a message, but you got to fight back. And Democrats, at some point, will. That clock is ticking. You don't have 592 days to show a fight. They need to do that immediately.
Yeah, let's talk a bit more about those town halls, specifically the Republican ones. It's been a bit of an excruciating watch to see these Republican congressmen standing there facing such anger from their constituents, and they know they can't show any solidarity in that moment because that could be career-ending.
Well, it's a no-win-win situation. Of course, you want to be visible in front of town halls to be meeting with constituents, but at the same time, you're starting to see pushback, particularly around how the Trump administration is trying to, eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse, as they say. Particularly Elon Musk and his advisory Doge group have, really gotten voters very angry. And so on the one hand, to your point, they want to be sympathetic to their voters and constituents, but on the other hand, they're also trying to be a team player with their party. I will say, though, too, Republicans are not the only ones taking heat in these town halls. This week, we saw Congressman Glenn Ivey in Maryland in a solidly blue district who also received a lot of pushback. And it's tough for him because his party's in the minority, even though it's a very slim GOP majority in the House. Democrats are also in a little bit of a tough position as well. There's only so much that they can do in terms of fighting back.
As I said earlier, it's show me some enthusiasm. You have all great answers, but I don't see any results when you show up to work on Capitol Hill. President Trump is pushing the envelope every day. He has an agenda. What is the Democratic agenda, and what are we going to be able to support you with and rally around and fight back? People want a fight, a political fight.
Yeah, and speaking to people at protests, it seems they definitely want to fight, but they also want a leader. They want someone that they can look to, who can unify, who can inspire and motivate in this moment. Way too early to start talking about who's going to run in 2026. But this is a tricky time, isn't it? Because with that need for somebody, it's not going to be the person who runs for president. Does it need to be someone else, or should it be someone who's running for president stepping in early? Who, Caroline, who?
Well, I think that you are starting to see some of these floated 2028 contenders. But to your point, there is no heir apparent. Former President Biden has ceded the spotlight. Former Vice President Harris is also trying to stay away from the spotlight right now. That makes it particularly difficult for Democrats. We are starting to see some figures within the party, like Senator Bernie Sanders, Congresswoman Alexia Ocasio-Cortez, who are trying to, season on this anger and hold some of their own rallies and try to rally their bases. But there are only a few people at this moment. The other thing to sort of know is that, to Orson's point, while Democrats want a fighter, their voters they're courting a lot of these Trump voters who also voted for Senate Democrats this past cycle. So you're also trying to give voters a sense of what they are for, not just simply what they're against.
Yeah. Orson, who do you think should lead this movement, the resistance?
Well, I don't think anyone can predict at this point. No one predicted Obama, no one predicted no one predicted Trump the first time. What I can predict is probably the candidate won't come from Washington, D.C. It'll probably be a governor from one of the battleground states. So which one of those governors can speak best to the economy will probably be your candidate for the nomination.
Okay, both. Thank you very much, Caroline and Orson. Thank you. So the nascent opposition has a big job on its hands. Trump 2.0 is showing no signs of slowing down. We're keeping across it all on Inside America. Thanks for watching, and do join us next time.